Ebony Johnson was no ordinary woman. At 30 years old, she had built a life many could only dream of. She owned one of the most popular restaurants in Lagos, Nigeria. Nestled in the heart of Victoria Island, Ebony's Delights drew people from all over the city, businessmen, celebrities, and everyday Lagosians flocking to her restaurant, eager to taste the food that had everyone talking. Ebony was as beautiful as her restaurant was successful. Her deep, flawless skin shimmered like polished mahogany. She had the charm and grace that made people instantly feel comfortable around her. And she had a talent for cooking that was unmatched. But there was something more about Ebony that made her restaurant thrive. Something hidden, something no one could guess. Ebony's restaurant had not always been this successful. In fact, there was a time when Ebony's Delights had been just another struggling eatery in a city filled with competition. The first 2 years after opening had been a nightmare. Business was slow, bills were piling up, and Ebony was on the verge of closing her doors for good. But all of that changed one fateful night. Ebony had been desperate, searching for a way to save her dream. That night, she stayed late at the restaurant, alone in the kitchen, wondering what more she could do. It was then, as she was preparing her signature jollof rice, that she accidentally cut her hand. The blood dripped into the pot, and as she hurried to clean herself up, she had a strange thought. An unsettling thought that seemed to come from somewhere deep within her. What if there's power in this? Ebony shook her head, dismissing the thought as ridiculous. But the next day, something strange happened. The customers who tasted her food raved about it like never before. They couldn't get enough. Her jollof rice, already good, was now something otherworldly. People were calling it the best they had ever tasted. At first, Ebony thought it was just a coincidence. But as the days went by, she noticed something else. Whenever she cooked while menstruating, the food seemed to have a magical effect on her customers. They loved it, they craved it, and they kept coming back for more. Ebony's discovery disturbed her at first. Could her menstruation really be the key to her newfound success? It seemed absurd, but the more she experimented, the more she realized it was true. She began to time her special dishes with her menstrual cycle, only preparing them during her period. And every time, the results were the same. Customers flocked to her restaurant in droves, and business boomed. Her friends and family couldn't understand how she had turned things around so quickly. Even her closest confidants didn't know the secret behind her success. To everyone else, Ebony was just a gifted cook, a woman with a natural talent for creating mouth-watering dishes. But inside, Ebony struggled with the weight of her secret. She had grown up in a religious household, where she was taught that the human body, especially a woman's body, was sacred. Using her menstrual blood in this way felt wrong, almost like she was dabbling in something unnatural. Yet, she couldn't deny the results. Her restaurant was flourishing like never before, and for the first time in her life, she felt powerful. As the months went by, Ebony grew more confident in her abilities. She developed a routine, using her menstrual blood sparingly, only adding a few drops to certain dishes. The more she used it, the more she began to feel a strange connection to the food she prepared. It was as though she was infusing the meals with more than just flavor. She was pouring a part of herself into them. The success of Ebony's Delights grew beyond Lagos. People from all over Nigeria and even from abroad started visiting her restaurant, eager to experience the magic of her cooking. Ebony became a celebrity in her own right, appearing on TV shows and gracing the covers of magazines. She was the new queen of Lagos cuisine, and no one could rival her. One evening, after another busy day at the restaurant, Ebony sat in her office, counting the cash in her register. Business was better than she had ever imagined. She should have been happy, but a growing unease gnawed at her. Her secret weighed heavily on her mind. What if someone found out? What if the very thing that had brought her success ended up destroying everything she had built? Just as she was lost in thought, there was a knock at her office door. Ebony frowned. It was late, and she wasn't expecting anyone. "Come in," she called out. The door opened slowly, and a tall, elegantly dressed woman stepped inside. She was stunning tall, with smooth, dark skin and striking, almond-shaped eyes. Ebony had never seen her before, yet something about the woman's presence made her feel uneasy. "Good evening, Ebony," the woman said in a low, melodic voice. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." Ebony stood up, her heart racing. "Who are you?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "How did you get in here?" The woman smiled, a knowing smile that sent a chill down Ebony's spine. "I'm not here to harm you," she said, stepping closer. "I'm here because I know your secret." Ebony's breath caught in her throat. Her heart pounded as the woman's words hung in the air. How could this stranger possibly know? No one knew. She had been so careful. "I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help." Ebony took a step back, her mind racing. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman's smile deepened. "I'm like you, Ebony. I know the power you possess, and I know how you've been using it. Menstruation is a powerful thing, more powerful than you realize. But you've only just scratched the surface of what you can do." Ebony's eyes widened. "Who are you?" "My name is Adesla," the woman said, her voice soft but commanding. "And I come from a long line of women who have harnessed the power of the menstrual cycle for centuries. What you're doing is not new, Ebony. Women like us have been using our gifts for generations, though many have forgotten the old ways." Adesua explained that in ancient times, certain women were revered for their connection to the natural cycles of the earth. These women, often called Ogbanj, had the ability to use their menstrual blood to create powerful magic. Magic that could bring fortune, success, and even healing. "But there's a price," Adesua warned. "The power you've tapped into doesn't come without consequences. The more you use it, the more it consumes you. You've already begun to feel it, haven't you? The unease, the restlessness." Ebony nodded slowly. She had been feeling strange lately, like something was pulling at her, drawing her deeper into the mystery of her power. She had been having vivid dreams where she was standing in a dark forest, surrounded by ancient spirits whispering her name. Adesua's eyes glinted as she leaned closer. "You have a choice, Ebony. You can continue down this path, using your power to fuel your success. But if you do, the power will begin to demand more from you. It will consume not just your blood, but your soul." Ebony felt a chill run down her spine. "What happens if I stop?" Adesua's smile faded. "If you stop, the magic will fade. Your restaurant will lose its sparkle, your customers will leave, and everything you've built will crumble." The words hit Ebony like a blow. She had worked so hard to get where she was. She had sacrificed everything for this success. Could she really walk away from it all? For a long moment, Ebony said nothing, her mind racing with possibilities. The success, the fame, the wealth, was it worth the cost? Was she willing to sacrifice her soul for something that was ultimately temporary? Finally, she looked up at Adesua, her voice steady. "There must be another way." Adesua's expression softened, as though she had been expecting the question. "There is," she said quietly, "but it won't be easy." She explained that Ebony could free herself from the power of the menstrual magic, but it would require a ritual, one that involved giving up not just her connection to the magic, but also the success that had come with it. "You will have to let go," Adesua said. "You will have to start over, but you will be free." That night, Ebony stood in her restaurant's kitchen, staring at the ingredients laid out before her. She had made her decision. She could no longer live with the burden of the power she had tapped into. It had brought her success, yes, but it had also brought darkness into her life. Darkness she could no longer ignore. With a deep breath, Ebony began the ritual Adesua had taught her. It was a simple ceremony, one that involved burning certain herbs and reciting an ancient prayer. As she performed the ritual, she felt a strange weight lift from her shoulders, as though the power that had clung to her was slowly releasing its grip. The air around her felt lighter, and the heaviness in her heart began to dissolve. She knew that after tonight, everything would change. Her restaurant, her fame, her fortune, they would all slip away. But in return, she would regain her freedom. As the flames of the burning herbs crackled, and the ancient words fell from her lips, Ebony closed her eyes and let go of the fear that had gripped her for so long. She was ready to embrace whatever came next, even if it meant starting over from scratch. The next morning, Ebony woke up with a sense of calm that she hadn't felt in years. The sun was streaming through the curtains of her bedroom, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt at peace. She got dressed and headed to the restaurant, unsure of what she would find. When she arrived at Ebony's Delights, she was met with a strange sight. The usual crowd of customers wasn't there. The parking lot, which was normally packed by mid-morning, was empty. Inside, the staff moved around aimlessly, unsure of what was happening. Ebony walked into the kitchen, her heart pounding. She knew this was the beginning of the end. She had prepared herself for it, but the reality of it still hit hard. Her manager, Kemi, approached her, confusion written all over her face. "Madam, no customers today," Kemi said. "People are saying the food tastes different." Ebony nodded, her throat tight. "It's okay, Kemi. Let the staff go home early today." Kemi stared at her in disbelief. "But, madam, we're losing business. What do we do?" Ebony gave her a gentle smile. "We start over, Kemi. Things are going to be different from now on." Kemi didn't understand, but she trusted Ebony enough not to ask more questions. The staff was dismissed, and the restaurant that had once been the busiest spot in Lagos was left eerily quiet. As the days passed, word spread quickly through Lagos that Ebony's Delights had lost its magic. Customers who once swore by the restaurant's food stopped coming. The flavors that had once drawn people in from miles around now seemed ordinary, bland even. The media that had once celebrated Ebony's rise to fame now speculated about her sudden fall from grace. Ebony watched it all unfold with a mixture of sadness and relief. She knew this was the price she had to pay for her decision, but it didn't make it any easier. Her restaurant, her pride and joy, was fading away, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. But despite the loss, Ebony found solace in the freedom she had gained. The power that had once controlled her was gone, and with it, the darkness that had clouded her mind. She no longer felt the strange pull of the magic that had once consumed her, and for the first time in years, she felt like herself again. The restaurant eventually closed its doors. The space that had once been filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of dishes was now empty, a shell of its former self. But Ebony wasn't broken. She had learned something valuable through her journey. There were things more important than success, fame, and fortune. There was freedom, peace, and the ability to live without the weight of a dark secret hanging over her. Months after Ebony's Delights closed, Ebony moved to a quieter part of Lagos, far from the hustle and bustle of the city center. She started a small catering business, one that focused on simple, honest food. There were no shortcuts, no hidden ingredients, and certainly no magic. Just good, wholesome meals made with love and care. Her new business wasn't as flashy as her restaurant had been, but it brought her a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. She didn't have the same number of customers, and she certainly wasn't making as much money, but she was happy. Years later, Ebony's catering business had grown steadily, but she kept it small and manageable. She no longer craved the spotlight, and her life was filled with contentment. One day, while preparing for a large family reunion event, a young girl named Ada, who worked as her assistant, approached her. "Madam Ebony," Ada said hesitantly, "there's something I've been meaning to ask you." Ebony looked up from the pot of stew she was stirring. "Yes, Ada, what is it?" Ada fidgeted nervously before speaking. "I've heard stories about how Ebony's Delights was once the best restaurant in Lagos, and how the food was, well, magical." Ebony smiled softly. "Yes, people used to say that." Ada hesitated again. "Is it true that you used something special in the food?" Ebony paused, stirring the pot thoughtfully. "It's true that the food had something extra." She looked at Ada, her eyes kind but firm. "The truth is, success doesn't come from magic. It comes from hard work, from passion, and from staying true to yourself. That's the only secret ingredient you'll ever need." Ada nodded slowly, taking in the words. "I'll remember that, madam." As Ada went back to work, Ebony smiled to herself. The girl was young, eager to learn, and full of potential. She reminded Ebony of herself in her younger years, full of dreams, searching for a way to succeed. But now, Ebony knew better. There were no shortcuts, no tricks, only the truth of who you were and what you stood for. And that, she realized, was the most powerful magic of all. Years later, as Ebony sat on the porch of her quiet home, watching the sun set over the city of Lagos, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the heights of fame and fortune, to the quiet, fulfilling life she now led, she had learned one valuable lesson. Success wasn't about how high you climbed, but about the peace you found along the way. She had chosen her path wisely, and though it hadn't been easy, it had been worth every step. Ebony smiled, breathing in the cool evening air. She was finally free.